those who don't know me, I spent 30 years working in Corobrik in various disciplines, from technical the first 12 years and then commercial and sales. I spent 10 years in ceramic tiles and ceramic sanitary ware. So I really never left the ceramic industry per se. It's my first love. I only love from the work point of view. Eurocode 6, I'm indebted to Fred Cross for his paper, which was published in the Quarterly Journal, motivating the adoption of Eurocode structural design of masonry for South Africa. And that was in the Quarterly Journal of the South African Institute of Consulting Engineers, March 2014. So I've drawn on that to set the baseline. Currently, the South African design standards for structural masonry are dealt with in only two standards: SANS 10164 Part 1, the structural use of masonry, unreinforced masonry walling, and then Part 2, which deals with reinforced and pre-stressed masonry walling. Now, why do we want to change? Well, these design standards are based on British Standard 5628, Part 1 and Part 2. They were adopted 35 years ago and 19 years ago, respectively. The UK adopted Eurocode 6 in 2006-2007 and withdrew the two BS standards. And the current South African structural design standards are really increasingly out of date. They are conservative and restrictive, and there is no up-to-date body of masonry research data to draw upon from the UK or Europe. Eurocode 6, in comparison, comprises four parts. One is the rules for reinforced and unreinforced masonry, structural fire design, selection of materials and execution of masonry, which is a code of practice for quality of workmanship on site, and then simplified calculation methods for unreinforced masonry structures. And the rules of the game are that when you adopt Eurocode 6, you adopt it in its entirety, which then includes the material specification, the testing methods, as well as the testing of wallets, and I'll come to each of those in turn. But they do have a bit of wiggle room there. Each of these has a national annexure for specific national conditions, and I'll pick up on a few of those that will affect us. The supporting masonry unit standards are BS EN 77 Part 1, specification for clay masonry units, and then Part 2, specification for calcium silicate, and then Part 3, specification for aggregate concrete masonry units. There are a number of others which I haven't put in there, relating to aerated concrete and other manufactured walling materials. If those were to come into use in South Africa, then those would just be available to be slotted in. Now, there are national annexures to these as well for our particular conditions. And for instance, the language of bricks, which we have got, which is NFP, NFX, FBX, FBA, that I would recommend we would keep. It's a good marketing tool. The architects do rely upon it. That would then be put into the national annexure. Now, the British standard or European norm standard clearly has requirements and test methods for freeze-thaw resistance. That we would just in the national annexure would say not applicable to South African conditions. Then, again, in the European standards, total soluble salts is required to be measured on fired product. Again, this is quite a complex test procedure, and it's expensive and doesn't actually tell us anything, because what it's trying to do is say, is your product durable under the various climatic conditions? Now, that again, we would say that is not applicable to South Africa, and we would either have to develop a durability test or the manufacturer themselves indicate what is required. The other question which has come up is, does the EN standards specify or prescribe the dimensions of units? The answer, as per SANS 227, no. They define a hollow unit and a solid unit, and that is the only one. So dimensionally, you're free to produce any dimension you want that's going to be cost effective and competitive, and the tolerances on the individual dimensions and average dimensions are governed by a formula, and I've done the calculation, and most times 2 out of 3 or 4 out of 5 our existing SANS is equal or if not tighter. But again, in the Eurocode, the manufacturer can specify a characteristic value for his which may not fit into any of the above. So the manufacturer, with their knowledge, can say, I don't I don't have ±2 and there I've got ±4 on that individual dimension, and that is what is the agreement between the manufacturer and the contractor and the architect. The supporting test methods for masonry units, there are 20 of them, and they cover clay, calcium silicate and aggregate concrete units, and aerated or gas baton as it's known. And the supporting test methods for masonry wallets, which is part 1 to part 5, covering compressive, flexural, shear, bond strength and lateral bond strength. That, we don't have a lot of information, but there's a wealth of information to draw upon to start with from the UK and the EU. And then we would then slowly embark upon a program of where it is required. We would then build up our own test data. What are the benefits that we would be looking at? Certainly there is an opportunity for innovation in structural masonry for Eurocode 6. Especially in social and affordable housing, 2 to 3 story walk up, walk down, improving our competitiveness against alternative building technologies, ABTs. And listening carefully to the marketing team, in my mind it was quite clear that alternative building technologies are something we must talk about internally and externally to our customers, and without necessarily saying so outright, rank them as inferior to traditional clay, masonry and mortar. Now if we can add the Eurocode 6 and the opportunities for innovation to that, we then have an innovative building technology that starts to give us a competitive leverage against ABTs. The SA structural engineers will have the opportunity to utilise current UK and EU best practice in structural masonry design, and ongoing EU and UK masonry research body of data and information will be available to the local engineers. So that is the opportunities and the benefits. Thank you.